I'm sure you've heard this phrase before. I support immigration, but only legal immigration. I love immigrants, but I think they have to come here legally.
You guys can't see it, but I have a beer in my hand for this one. It's gonna get dicey. And on this note, yeah, I have no issue with immigrants. I wouldn't call it a love, more like a passive indifference. I quite frankly didn't care if immigrants came here or if they didn't. It's none of my business. I don't give a shit either way. But I'm just waiting for the whole turnaround where somehow this becomes about racism and everyone should be allowed and open borders. I'm just waiting for that massive dick to flop out of his pants. But oh wait, excuse me, her pants. Anyway, all active assholeness aside and intentional quote unquote misgendering aside, let's hear what Riley has to say.
And while this can sound reasonable, it actually demonstrates a deep misunderstanding of immigration policy and why people immigrate.
Hold on. So the whole concept of I don't have any problem with immigrants or I love immigrants, whatever you prefer to say, coming to the United States, as long as they come here legally, is somehow subjectively flawed because we don't understand immigration. We don't have a basic understanding of immigration and why people emigrate. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, Riley, that you don't have a basic understanding of immigration. I'm going to say that I'm going to go out further onto that limb and say, nah, you have an absolute ignorance of the basic laws of immigration. But I'll wait and see. I'm not one to judge too harshly, too quickly, but I can see already, since I'm stopping you every 6 seconds because you say something absolutely stupid, that this is going to be very long and very drawn out and very arduous process. So let us continue.
First of all, legal immigration is not easy. For many, it's not even possible. It's not like if you're a good person, you can just apply to immigrate and they'll let you come in. I think people have this idea that immigrants look at their options, immigrating with documents or immigrating without documents, and just go, I guess I'm eligible for legal immigration, but that's annoying and hard. It'd be so much easier to just immigrate illegally.
Yes, legal immigration isn't easy, but that's because we don't want people just being able to simply come in whenever they want without any reason to be here, or for that matter, anything to contribute to society. The fact of the matter is that we have limited resources inside the borders of this country. We have limited jobs. We have limited places in education, even. We have limited everything. If you really think about it. If you really think about it, at the core. But the one thing that I really got to point out here, you clever little twit, is I noticed how you did the whole graying out thing. Like this is something that's somebody that's opposing your opinion would say. But all I have to say to that is you are kind of right in thinking that it is easier for people just to cross the border rather than having to deal with all the bureaucracy and red tape that there is involved with actually getting here legally. The thing is that snide way of saying it, aside from the fact that it makes you look like an utter disingenuous cunt, you're ignoring the point. It's difficult to come here specifically because A, America is a great country, and B, because we simply just can't open the borders to everybody that wants to come here. I'm sorry, it just cannot be done. Anyway, I'm going to give you more of an opportunity to explain yourself with the hopes that you show some even a slight beacon of hope of understanding. But what can I say? I'm an optimist.
But that couldn't be farther from the truth. Immigrating without documents is extremely dangerous, and people have no guarantee of their safety during their journey or even once they're in the US, since they'll be afraid to go to the police. The decision to immigrate without documents is not one that is made lightly. It's a huge decision with a lot of risks. It's not an easier path by any means.
And you know what? Coming here legally isn't easy. I'll give you that. I'll concede that argument because you're right. It is not easy, but that's the point. It's not made to be easy. It's made to be arduous task because on top of all the other shit, we'll come down to the current state of the world right now. We don't need people that are coming here all, willy-nilly, free to come over here, that have become terrorists. Now, that is in and of itself is not the entire argument I would have towards that. It's just something that I wanted to point out. But another thing is that they are given another choice to come here legally. Like, it is there. Does that guarantee that you're going to get it? No. But hell, the ability for me to go to Harvard is there. I have the option. But I don't have the grades either. But you don't see me bitching about how they need to have open schools at Harvard because it's unfair to people that are less educated to get a fucking to go to Harvard and get an education there. Your argument is based solely upon feels, and I'm sorry, but I don't have them feels. Moving on.
But for some people, it can be the only path. Many wonderful people are not eligible for immigrant visas. The kinds of visas the US issues are very narrow and meant to only take in a certain kind of person.
And I'm sorry, but that in of itself is not a bad thing. There is no law on the books that says that America has to take everybody. Hell, you can be turned away for any number of reasons. But that's besides the point. I'm sure that you're about ready to hop on the whole only the rich can get here thing, but there are many people in this country that will tell you that they did it through the proper channels. Is it easy? No, but like I said before, that's not the point. The point is that legal immigration is there, and choosing to ignore the law is disrespecting the United States because you are disrespecting fundamental laws. It's not a free-for-all here. I'm sorry, get that shit out of your head.
Generally wealthy people, like people who can afford to get a high-level education that gets them an employer-sponsored visa, or people who can afford to buy a $1 million EB-5 visa. And some might choose to immigrate without documents because it's faster and they don't have time to wait. Legal immigration is often a years-long process. It's incredibly...
You know that a lot of schools will give you scholarships that allow you to come to the United States under school-based visas, right? Education-based visas. It's not a very uncommon thing, and I can't believe that you've never heard of it before, but there are certain people that do that are not wealthy. They simply had very good grades and very good marks throughout their history. And when they came to America, or through whatever means that they came here and were like, hey, I would like to go to college inside of the borders of your country, they were like, oh, I see that you're a very, adept student. You're very intelligent, and you could possibly add something to our society by the means of science, technology, mathematics, etc., etc., etc. That's not a very difficult concept to understand. Now, as for the whole $1 million EBT thing, hey, if they choose to charge $1 million for a visa and some dumb cunt's actually willing to fucking buy it, hey, that's just $1 million to help fund that, multi-trillion-dollar debt that we have, which, by the way, allowing illegal immigrants to, live off of the system that we have inside of this country, to live off of that system, by the way, which increases the national debt. But I'm sorry, you probably don't want to hear about that because it might hurt your fifis, and I probably sound like a racist right now because, all immigrants come from Mexico. Never anywhere else. Ever. Never. Only Mexico. Wait a minute. Something about what I just said didn't sound right.
Difficult and convoluted. It includes hurdles that not everyone can get over, and there's no guarantee of a visa at the end of it. So you might end up spending years working towards a visa that you're ultimately denied. If someone has to leave their country right now for whatever reason, they don't have years to wait around. If their safety is threatened or they're starving, they can't just wait years for a visa to be approved. They might not make it that long.
Alright, Riley, I'm going to use some of your logic here. You know what? Instead of going out and getting a college education or working hard and, and making something of myself, I'm just going to go steal a Ferrari because ain't nobody got time to wait for that shit. I want my Ferrari now. I'm sorry, it's a terrible analogy, but you see where I'm coming from. You can't use the argument that you need something now as an excuse to break the law. And any amount of posturing or emotional grandstanding you're going to try to do to make me feel bad for these people isn't going to work. Because the only thing I care about are the facts. They're coming here illegally. They're not paying taxes, which, by the way, you as a self-proclaimed liberal should have an extreme issue with. That's besides the point. And on top of that, they're reaping the benefits of the system without paying into it on top of that. But they're given a free pass in a lot of cases because, they came here under the pretenses of, their country is shit, which I'll get into that fucking can of worms in a fucking minute. But let me tell you something. There's a lot of things in this world that you can put a lot of effort in and you're not going to be guaranteed a result at the end. Immigration happens to be one of them. And I'm sorry, that hurts your fifis, but that's the way that it works. Hell, if we were to apply your logic to everything else in this world, all of us would be given everything that we ever wanted. Because, me, I put time into my art when I was in school. You don't see me being as an art major, not necessarily an art major, well, not getting into the technicalities of what I have my degree in, But you don't see me taking my degree and being like, hey, I put years into this. I've passed hurdles. I deserve a job. No, that's not the way the world works. Let's say, give you an example here. A Mexican comes to the border who has experience in bricklaying. But the demand for bricklaying in the borders of the United States is at an all-time low. We deny that person because the work is not here for them. So instead of that, they leave the impoverished Mexico to come live in a, elevated form of poverty within the United States? What kind of sense does that fucking make? But anyway, before I jump down the rabbit hole of, Mexico's problem being illegal immigration, let's continue to hear what Riley has to say, and I will save my rant for the end.
And on top of that, our system for legal immigration is not an objective reality devoid of any sort of biases. It's a system made by people, their biases included. And historically, it's been incredibly racist. The 1882 Chinese Exclusion Act barred virtually all immigration from China.
Now, this is where I actually have to concede and again another argument to Riley, the point in case that actually, yes, this act did happen, and yes, it restricted immigration from specifically the Chinese. But the point that needs to be made here is context. At the time, the gold rush was happening, and a lot of Chinese laborers were coming over to work on the railroad. And as time went on and gold became more and more scarce and competition arose, relations between the two races, Native American, Native American, someone's going to give me shit for that one, but the Americans and the Chinese became sour. Now, the reality of the situation is this was put in to defend the jobs of Americans that were already here, on top of the fact that, relations had turned sour. So, racism? Yeah. But racism devoid of reason? Not necessarily. It has racism in the sense that they specifically pointed out the Chinese, but there's context to it because it was used to protect jobs of people that were already here. Now, that also included the jobs of the Chinese that were already here. So, a little half a dozen in one hand, half a dozen in the other. It's really depends on how you look at it, kind of, model going on here. But I did concede the fact that, yeah, it was a little racist. Anyway, moving on.
Then the 1907 Gentlemen's Agreement did a similar thing for immigration from Japan. The 1917 Asiatic Barred Zone Act expanded this ban.
Oh, easy there, you little disingenuous fuckstick. The 1907 Gentlemen's Agreement was an agreement between the United States and Japan to relieve tensions between the two nations. It was never ratified by Congress, and it was never actually officially law. But, also, spoiler alert, it was agreement between the two nations. That is not necessarily a bad thing. It has absolutely nothing to do with race, so much it has to do with, political tension between the two countries over, what could it possibly have been about? Well, basically it was trade. That being said, also, they weren't necessarily not allowed to come to the United States. They weren't allowed to come to the Continental 48, but they were still allowed to go to the territory of Hawaii. So, be careful what you say. Walk on eggshells, as some people will point you out where you were wrong. And this is one of those situations where you're wrong. It was never ramified. In fact, Theodore Roosevelt had a positive opinion of Japan. And that's part of the reason why he took the agreement. Sorry to burst your fucking bubble.
The Act of 1924 brought all of this together and barred immigration from most Asian countries.
Yes, except it wasn't only Asian countries that were affected. A multitude of countries that were affected were countries that were involved or had some hand in World War I. Seeing as in 1924, the Great Depression hadn't quite started yet, but things were headed down that path. And aside from that fact, that being ignored entirely, also, we did extreme restrictions on Eastern Europeans, especially Italians and Jews, and extreme restrictions on Africans as well. This is not the first time this has happened. And also, these are restrictions that were, not only accepted, but they were enforced. Whereas the situation we're talking about is simply people hopping the border. And there is no limit on the immigration of these people that are hopping the border, other than, you have to have a skill, you have to have either a skill, an education, or some form of job that we need. And when I say education, I mean higher education. But anyway, moving on.
The Immigration Act of 1965 finally ended bans based on country of origin. Kind of. Because there are a bunch of different types of visas, and each of those has a different cap on how many can be given out each year. But across the board for family-sponsored and employment-sponsored visas, the two main forms of immigrant visas, no country is allowed to have more than 7% of the total visas available. So every country has the exact same cap regardless of their population. Guess who that hurts? Anyone from a high population country like India or China, or countries where there's a high demand for immigrating to the US, like Mexico or El Salvador.
So what? What does it matter? 100 people or no people? Like, ban versus restriction are two different things. Was there a reason for the restriction? Was there no need for the labor that they offered? Was there no need for the skills that they offered? Hell, like I said, there is nothing written in the law that says that America has to accept anyone. I mean, is that a very difficult concept to understand, or are you just so thick-skulled that you like to pin races into everything? The fact that they let 100 Chinese in after such a long history between the two countries is amazing in of itself. And you didn't live back then, neither did I. But the fact of the matter is that you have to understand that two different times that we're dealing with here. You see, the situation being that both you and I are sitting at a piece of advanced technology, and probably what I can assume in your case is air-conditioned room, and in my case is, well, a nothing room because it's currently not cold out, but we have these privileges. Back then, they didn't. They had to protect their livelihood from anything. But both of our, technological privileges being pointed out, I shall move on.
Salvador or the Philippines. Meanwhile, some countries with low populations and low demand for immigrating to the US, like Sweden or France, never use anywhere close to the percentage of visas that they're allotted. So that means that every year, thousands of available visas are not claimed because they're allotted to countries that don't need them, instead of countries that do, because of this arbitrary 7% rule.
Right, are you aware of what a ban is? Ban is simply saying that you can't come here. That's being like a ban. Hey, if we were banning immigration from India, they wouldn't get that 7%. That 7% across the board seems pretty fair to me. Everybody has 7% of an option. Now, whether or not people actually use that is irrelevant. The reason why there's such a demand from these countries is because these countries are usually fucking shitholes. And they want to find a better life in a country that isn't a shithole. Now, with that being said, here's the thing. You can't just go like, oh, well, these people didn't use all theirs, so we're just going to give it to these other people. No. It's not how the world works. 7% across the board to everybody, because when we deal with those people that are 7% from the country that is high population, or in the other case you pointed out, where there's a high demand for these people that want to immigrate to the United States, we want the best and the brightest and the cream of the crop. Now, I hate to say that, but that has nothing to do with race. One Indian person, I mean literally from India, by the way, one Indian person that's a doctor is more valuable than, in the eyes of immigration, mind you, in the eyes of immigration, that one Indian individual that is a doctor is far more important to society than the Indian who's a fucking taxi driver. Could you say that I'm basing everything off of reals rather than feels? Well, yeah, that's because I am, because I don't give a shit about your fucking feelings. It sucks. You know what else sucks? Life. Get over it. And that arbitrary. It's not arbitrary. Do you even know what arbitrary means? Well, yes, you could say it's based off the whim of the individual that put the law into place. But here's the thing. It's based off of like 7% across the board. It's relatively easy to understand when you look at it. And while, yes, those people in those countries may be hurting, it may be suffering, it's not our fucking job to fix them. It's not anybody's job other than the own individual living within that country to fix the issues that they have within that country. But, like I said, I'll save that rant for the end.
Not to mention that all these different types of visas and caps and systems are arbitrary and invented by the same kinds of racist old white men who banned all Asian immigration just a few decades earlier. Lots of people need or desperately want to come here who aren't high-skilled workers in the fields that the visas require or who don't have family members here. That means they can't immigrate here legally. The immigration system was designed not to create a path for anyone who deserved it, but to let in a small number of people who could benefit the US without changing its demographic too much.
Keep talking about this arbitrary number like you don't understand it. It's 7% across the board. It's basically as egalitarian and as lacking in identity politics as it comes, because they're like 7%, we don't care who the fuck you are. You get 7%, your 7% will take, and so on and so forth, etc. Now, you like using the feels argument because, well, it appeals to people and it makes it difficult for them to argue against you. However, me, I don't have a fucking heart, so I'll tell you outright. It's not our job to take these people. It's not our job to cater to individuals that do not benefit the United States. And on top of that, I don't mean benefit the United States as being, the next fucking doctor that cures cancer. No, I say next, excuse me. The next doctor in that cures cancer. There we go. That's proper, nomenclature there. But what I'm trying to say is, if you have skilled labor that there's a demand for within the United States, and I'm not talking like, when I say skilled labor, I don't mean a doctor. A doctor is a form of higher education labor. Skilled labor, I'm referring to bricklayers, carpenters, masonaries, which are also bricklayers. But you get my point. You have a better chance of getting here than a person who has no job or no skills at all. And it has always been that way, barring the situations where we put limitations on immigration due to strife within the country, to avoid situations that we are having now, that we are seeing now, where we have illegal immigrants walking down the streets holding the American flag, bitching about racism, while not supporting America at all in any way, shape, or form, while saying things that would make most people cringe without understanding their own lack of self-awareness. And then the fact of the matter is that they wave the Mexican flag when that's the shithole they ran away from, that they're trying to turn this country into. Mexico failed because it's a socialist society. America is not going to be so lucky. We're not going to get out of socialism if it gets any more of a foothold than it already has. We're not going to get out of it any luckier than anybody else. And enough of your old white man racist rhetoric bullshit. Listen to the facts. Understand them. This is common human thought and understanding. But I have another rant at the end of the video, so I'm going to cut this one short. Moving on.
You see, until 1965, immigration heavily favored people from Western Europe, so...
Yeah, that's because Western Europe shares a lot of our, culture. Our Western culture that you assholes want to destroy the very foundation of by just destroying things such as free speech and freedom of religion and freedom of expression just so we can sit and goose step to your communist narrative. Oh, excuse me, you're not a communist. That was just a joke, right? No, you're just a Marxist or socialist or whatever the fuck you want to call yourself. A socialist by any stripe is still a socialist. But that notwithstanding, and your own personal political beliefs aside, I think that you are quite literally not a bad person. You are just ignorant. And you don't understand where people are coming from. And you assume that when people say Western Europe, they mean white people. When in reality, there are white people that live in Eastern Europe too. It's called Russia. And for an extended period of time, guess what? Immigration from the USSR was extremely fucking limited. But you don't want to talk about that because it doesn't fit your narrative. And also, another thing to go on top of that, there in Western Europe, there may have been a lot of people that were white that were coming to the United States, but there are a lot of people that were of other descent that were coming to the United States. So, fucking tell me another fucking joke, asshole.
Expect that the immigration system lets in everybody who deserves to be let in? We're supposed to trust that system? We're supposed to funnel everybody into that system regardless of their situation?
Yes, and we're supposed to, just accept your way of thinking is supposedly fucking better. We allow everybody in. We allow everybody in that has a need. Here's a fucking thing that I'm going to explain to you that I'm going to have to try to drill through your probably concrete skull. God knows that there's nothing between those fucking ears that even remotely resembles a fucking brain. But if we let everybody in, free, all nilly-willy, free-willed, the U.S. would no longer exist. And no, I'm not referring to that in the sense of white culture wouldn't exist. No, I'm referring to that in the sense that literally the U.S. would no longer exist. To the north, you'd have people fleeing to fucking Canada. And to the south, you have the Mexicans coming over to simply make the United States Mexico. Or you'd have people from the Middle East coming here with no bars whatsoever and essentially turning it into the USistan. Now, is that racist? Well, it might be. But here's the fucking thing. Facts don't care about your fucking race. They don't care where you come from. The fact is that there is an issue in the Middle East with extremism. There is an issue in Mexico, in the United States, with illegal immigration. Get the fuck over it. It's not a matter of race. It's a matter of fact. You can see it. You can physically see the fucking numbers. And yet you morons immediately jump to the conclusion that it has to do with, well, you're just being a racist. No, I'm just seeing a fucking duck as a duck. No, the people that look at the duck and say that it's a fucking owl, they're insane. Literally, the literal definition of insanity. But I do have a rant at the end of this video, and I do feel is very much needed.
That's bullshit. It's a bad system intended to keep out anyone who these old racist white people were afraid of. And that includes people of color, but it also includes other marginalized groups. Did you know that gay people were not allowed to immigrate to the US until 1990?
Dear God, that was absolutely fucking painful. My frontal lobe is melted, and I'm fairly certain I have alcohol poisoning at this point. But to go on to the rant that I feel is so much needed in this situation. Here's the thing about Mexico and America. You say that they deserve to be here. They do not deserve to be here. Nobody outside of the United States outside of the United States citizenry deserves to be in the United States. The United States is for Americans that have citizenship in America. Now, you can be an immigrant and come to America and get your citizenship, and yes, we will welcome you with open arms. But here's the thing, we don't have to welcome everybody. There's nothing in law that says we fucking have to. But with that being said, the immigration issue comes down to simply more than them racist white folk don't let them colored people come into their goddamn country. No, it's more complicated than that, you unbelievable fuckwit. It's simple. I'm going to make it very small words, so hopefully Riley will be able to understand this. Mexico has first world resources. They have the ability to be a great country. The ability is there. The resources are there. The workforce is there. What's keeping Mexico from becoming a great fucking country is Mexico itself. Its socialist regime. Its government being ran by the fucking cartels. Hell, I remember not that long ago, the smug fucking ex-prime minister of Mexico giving Trump all kinds of shit about wanting to build a wall when this fucking asshole was taking bribes from the fucking cartels. He had the balls, the cojones, to bitch about the President of the United States and pretend like he has a moral fucking mountain to stand on when the guy was taking bribes from a bunch of people that kill innocent fucking kids and women. And innocent men, too. Let's not forget about that. But another thing about Mexico, the drug cartels, okay. There's no way we're going to be able to fix Mexico because, the drug cartels are too deep-seated, the socialist regime is too deep-seated, so let's just take them all in. And then what? The United States becomes fucking Mexico in 50 years? The reality check needs to be seen that, aside from the fact that I don't want the United States to be like Mexico, because Mexico is a fucking shithole. You have shanties next to mansions, for God's sakes. You have the cartel killing people on a regular basis. I don't want that in America. I don't want that in America because, you know what? Quite frankly, despite all of my lack of empathy and all of my assholeness and all of my country, I actually don't like people seeing other people. I don't like other people being killed for idiotic fucking reasons. Now, with that being said, the other reason why I feel like Mexico should get its shit together, because having a strong ally to the south is both beneficial to not only us in Mexico, but Canada and Mexico as well. And quite frankly, when you have people benefiting on all sides, I don't see how you could possibly turn that into a bad thing. But I'm sure that you would. You'd piss and moan and whine about how, they need to come here now and that they're in danger. Fucking yeah, right, they're in danger. They're in danger because their country is a crapple because A, the government won't let them be armed so they can defend themselves, and B, the government's working with the fucking cartels. So here's a C option for you. Instead of fucking suicide and coming here to live in a country where you'll be in essentially what is an elevated form of poverty, wherein instead of having a shanty, you have a house with a foundation and insulation, which, quite frankly, the second option is the better of the two. How about instead of running away, you fix your problem? This applies to refugees as well. If your country is such a shithole, do something about it. And this isn't me implying that it's going to be fucking easy either, because I don't want to argue with somebody about that shit. Me saying it can be done does not mean it's going to be easy. The American Revolution wasn't easy. The French Revolution wasn't easy. A lot of people died. A lot of lives were broken. And a lot of tears were shed to make this country the way that it is. And you fucking assholes are doing everything within your power to destroy it. Because of racism. Because of what? Racists in the goddamn legislation telling me what to do. When in reality, you don't have the fucking eyes to be able to see that not everybody there is fucking white or old for that matter. But I'm done ranting. This is my response video to Riley being the usual dumb cunt that he normally is. And yes, I am using he intentionally because you know what? I quite frankly like triggering people because I'm a fucking asshole. I've already established that. Anyway, I will see you all Wednesday. The other response video I have is taking me a hell of a lot longer than I thought it was going to. So if it's done by then, you'll see that then. And if not, you will have a regular old everyday rant. Much like the one I just did. Anyway, have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, and or night, and I will see you Wednesday. Oh, fuck, did I say Wednesday? I meant Thursday. Shit. That's the alcohol poking through. Don't worry about that. Anyway, night all.